Um, if it's not just me, whoop, give that a little smack. If it's not just me, raise your hands loud and proud. No shame in this place. I will admit that I used to groan whenever one was on. My mom always loved them, so they were always on in our house, usually starting November 1st. And I would just roll my eyes and think, how many times can we see the same Christmas town? How many times can we see things happen to turn out perfectly, where the small family business is always saved just in the nick of time? The big gingerbread competition is always won. The Christmas pageant always goes beautifully. Everyone in the town is somehow wildly really good looking. True love always prevails, and everything is wrapped up in a nice little bow. Christmas overall is a time that's really saturated with these picture-perfect stories. We put our nostalgia glasses on. Everyone is always nicer and warmer around the holidays. We go home for Christmas with our families, where at the end of the day, things always turn out how we imagine. Children dream away peacefully under the starry night, while Santa and his elves pull off the most seemingly impossible delivery route ever concocted. From the time we're little, our culture surrounds us with and pulls us into these stories and visions about this time of year. It's unfortunately no surprise to many of us that here in real life, those dreams don't always play out like we want them to. The story doesn't happen how we so strongly believe it should. People are lonely, they suffer and ache and are hungry on any day, but even on Christmas. People have to choose between medical treatment or being able to pay the next month's rent or this week's grocery bill. There's violence in our world. The war in Ukraine, the situation in Iran, with the government violently suppressing the women-led freedom protesters, the mass shootings we just had in the Walmart in Virginia and against the LGBT community at Club Q in Colorado. The world we strive for, a world where everyone has what they need, a world where we feel safe being out in public without fear of violence, a world where we take care of each other, a world where the oppressed are free to live and love in full. This world we strive for can sometimes feel like a dream deferred, or perhaps, if we've lost hope, a dream deceased, a fool's dream. Our text from Isaiah really captures this tension, this yearning between dream and current reality well. In our text from Isaiah, the prophet is concerned about the Assyrians, who were the big bad imperial power of the time. The nation that we think of as God's people, Israel, were split politically into northern and southern kingdoms, and they were both already under Assyrian influence in different ways. The northern kingdom had rebelled and was violently conquered by the Assyrians, while the southern kingdom was a vassal state under the Assyrians for a little while. Isaiah writes from the southern kingdom in the walking on eggshells time of deciding how to approach the looming Assyrian threat. The thing to note in all of this is that they were under major external threat for their own lives and for the survival of their people. Judah was also in internal turmoil. One of the major domestic issues that Isaiah wrote about was the growth of large estates and the hoarding of wealth by the aristocracy, leaving impoverished peasants with less and less of what they needed to survive and thrive. The chapters surrounding the Isaiah text for today are filled with indictments against the society for hypocrisy and injustice and calls for change. In Isaiah chapter 1, 16 through 17, we have cease to do evil, learn to do good, seek justice, rescue the oppressed, defend the orphan, plead for the widow, because these were things that weren't happening. The society originally envisioned by God and by the people, a land flowing with milk and honey, where there would be justice and mercy and love with God presiding over all, was also a dream deferred, and perhaps for some, a dream deceased. a fool's dream. Knowing that context, let's look at the text again. In the days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains and shall be raised above the hills. All the nations shall stream to it. Many peoples shall come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between nations and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." The tone of this text. What we have here is our prophet, in the name of and under the influence of God, dreaming. Though the society around Isaiah is far from the ideal, though it's ensnared in war and violence, though it's rife with poverty and injustice, Isaiah dreams. He dreams and he yearns for a society where people will gather together in community, where they will share knowledge, where peace will flow like a river, so much so that all of the death-dealing tools of war can be remade into tools of creation and harvest that reap rich nourishment for the masses. This poetry from Isaiah is not merely a dream, it is a promise. It is a revelation from God of what a land of divine love and justice will be. And that dream is the fuel and the guide for God's people as they live in the troubled times between promise and fulfillment. So that's all good and well, but you ask, what does any of this have to do with Christmas? Today is the first day of the church season we call Advent. Advent is the 4 weeks we wait in anticipation to celebrate and remember the birth of Jesus all those many years ago. It's the time we wait for the guiding star in the night to appear, for the lively first cries of holy love made flesh to be carried through the wind. In Luke's gospel, Jesus begins his ministry by standing in front of the synagogue and speaking this declaration of intent. "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Jesus, too, is a dreamer. He dreams of a world where the oppressed can live freely and fully, where the chains of the captive are shattered, where everyone has what they need to survive. And not only is Jesus dreaming this, he rolls up the scroll and says, "Today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." It's not just a dream, it's a promise that is already in its process of being fulfilled. This world really does sometimes feel like a dream deceased. Sometimes it feels naive and silly and tiring to continue to hope and dream and work for this seemingly impossible dream. I mean, after all, we know what real life looks like. We know that the main hero doesn't always win the big gingerbread contest, that the small family business doesn't always get saved in the nick of time, that true loves don't always end up with happily ever afters. We know the state of the world we live in, and we're reminded of it all the time, especially lately, it seems like. Jesus knew all about when society doesn't live up to the glory and the mercy of the Creator God. Jesus knew of injustice, hardship, violence, and hypocrisy. He knew these things, and yet he dreamed with us, and he shared the divine promise with us of a world of justice and love. Maybe, some would say, an impossible dream, but our God is a God of impossibilities. Our God is a God of fools' dreams come to fruition. In this season of Advent, we dream and we wait with expectation, but we do not do so idly because our actions show sparks of the vision, even when the vision is still in its full progress. So let's go, my fellow foolish dreamers. Let's envision together a world of love and peace and justice, a world where everyone has enough, where we reforge weapons of death and devastation into life-giving tools of creation, where we can finally, in every possible meaning, learn war no more. Let's love and fight for justice so that all who witness can see and feel the divine vision shine through. Welcome to Advent, my companions on the journey, as we live in the space between the promise and the fulfillment, the promise of a child who would so completely embody divine love that he saves us all, and the newborn cries sweeping over the desert night. The promise of a world of plenty where we learn war no more, and that world materialized in front of us. Let's be together and use our hearts and our hands to dream impossible dreams.